And so we have a surveillance camera looking down here at the street. And so people on the street. Now we know if we put surveillance cameras in the east end of town, it will push crime to the west. That's what they say. It doesn't necessarily actually move the crime physically, but it changes the statistics of crime in the east, and it causes relatively you have more crime in the west now. So if you put cameras on the east end and the west end, the crime has nowhere to go but up the rungs of the ladder towards corruption. So I'm not saying, and I'm not necessarily saying or hypothesizing that surveillance causes corruption, but I'm merely saying that if you lock some of the doors, statistically the percentage of crimes in the other doors is going to be more. If you lock the east doors of the building, you're probably going to have, and leave the west doors unlocked, crime's probably going to shift to entering from the other doors. So if you lock the street, but you leave corruption unlocked, then so surveillance is here on the ladder of life. Now there's something called oversight, which is simply congressional oversight or the police chief looking down, and that's called oversight. And oversight is also looking down the ladder. And so you've got the police watching the citizens, and then you've got the police chief or the oversight committee watching the police. But then you just push the corruption higher because, now I'm not saying that oversight causes high-level corruption any more than surveillance causes low-level corruption, but it changes the equilibrium. And it causes a shift in the equilibrium, which, in effect, makes an opportunity for crime to rise up. And so really what you need is to balance that. Let me redraw the ladder of life here. And I'm not suggesting to put cameras on chimney sweeps. But now if you put the cameras on people, then what happens is you have this is surveillance, and then when you put cameras on high-level officials, I call that undersight. So, whereas we have surveillance and oversight, we now have surveillance and undersight. And so, by the way, oversight is just an English translation of the word surveillance, but when you use the French word surveillance, people tend to think of it as lower level. The English translation of the same word, people usually use it as a higher level, like congressional oversight.